So one thing that a lot of people have noticed, and which is true, is that as you're brewing coffee, speed matters. In fact, in a recent paper by Dr. Samos Merke called The Role of Fines in Espresso Extraction, you actually see a graph where he looks at the headspace above espresso and measures the volatile organic compounds there, and essentially agrees that turbo shots and faster shots are preserving a lot of these aromatic compounds that tend to improve the experience of a drink. We've been so stuck in this mindset of a specific extraction range and time zone and all these things that we've been missing out on a lot of really unique tastes. So having high flow rates, having lower pressure, having coarser grounds are all in an attempt to really improve the aromatics of the coffee. But does that mean it's right for every coffee? Absolutely not. There are dark roasted coffees that taste great at 30 seconds or at 25 seconds or even at 50 seconds if someone's doing a really low, long pre-infusion like a Slayer style shot. All of which you can do on the Meticulous by controlling the flow, having exit conditions, and changing the flow and the pressure throughout the shot. So things that we can control beyond the shadow of a doubt. We can control flow rate. Now, with flow rate, the way that we can do this is by piston displacement. So by knowing the circumference, the diameter, all that of the funnel itself, means that we can, by movement of the piston, understand how many milliliters are displaced, which gives us an incredible precise amount of control over the movement of flow through the puck. You may say, how are we getting a measurement of flow through the puck? And that's a valid question because inside the funnel, so you have the outside of the funnel is like, that is awful. So you have the funnel with like the heating element in here, and this is where the piston goes, is inside this kind of cylinder. And then down below, we have our portafilter, right? There's the handle if you want a handle to feel better about it. So right when the piston raises, all of the water comes on top. You essentially don't have any headspace, right? So that is very different from a typical machine. Typically, a machine has the little shower screen, and it rains on top of our puck, right? So it's raining on top of the puck until it fills up the headspace. That's a gratuitous amount of headspace, but you get the point. There is a space between the top of the puck and the shower screen. It rains to fill that puck until you have essentially a column of water. With the Meticulous, right when that piston rises, you have a floodgate of water on top of the puck. So then it begins to push through. So really our flow rate is, I guess you could really say it's flow displacement rate. How much of this water is being displaced with every movement of the piston, okay? So that's what's being displaced through the puck. So that means, for instance, you would not be able to just do a shower and stop, a shower and stop. Right when you start any type of shot, all the water's coming out onto wherever it's going. It's an espresso machine. You have grounds that can hold back water. So that's kind of the idea here. So you wouldn't be able to do some sort of, filter style coffee that works in spurts because piston raises. That's the whole idea of the piston. It's similar to like, the popular manual levers that people have at home. You pour in water, you lift the handle, the piston's up, all the water's down. If you didn't have a portafilter under it, all the water would just fall out all at once. So there is no sprinkling going on, which is great. We don't really want headspace, so we're not getting headspace, which helps us improve body, which allows us to get some of the most luscious texture you can get on an espresso machine. So all that said, we are able to control the flow rate, meaning that displacement of water. We can also control pressure ad nauseum, pressure ad infinitum. So we have the capability of raising or lowering the pressure. Now you can put limits in there though, saying I want to hit 6 bar of pressure. Now if you have no limits, then it's gonna yeet at it and go heavy, right? Because we have all of this here, so it can go almost infinite amount of milliliters per second, not infinite, but it can go hard. So normally you put some sort of limit on it, but I don't want it to be a faster displacement of water than 10 milliliters a second or 8 milliliters a second. So you have the capability of controlling that pressure, effectively decoupling the two. You can also do exit conditions on both, as I said earlier. We can also do temperature, though with temperature, it is a static temperature. So with temp, you cannot profile. So temperature profiling would require having some sort of flow-through heater, or would require having some sort of cold water inlet valve that would allow you to mix waters, and right before it hit the puck, it would be able to instantaneously mix it and have multiple readings, yada, yada, yada. This has a heating element inside of it. It's got a heating coil around it, but you set the temperature at the beginning, and that's the temperature you're working with. So on temperature, you can have 20 different profiles downloaded on your machine, and every single one of them could have a different temperature. And within you know, every time you change your shot, you could have a different temperature to begin with. But you're not going to be able to dynamically temperature profile, which is an important thing to note. But in the end, you do have control over your starting temperature, whether that's 45 Celsius or 92 Celsius. So the big things that you're able to control are flow, pressure, and temperature, but there is the one other thing, which is power. Now, power is something that honestly you can get away with kind of ignoring if you want, but is also something that can be fun to play with. And that is the power of the piston going into the coffee. So if you do 10% power, that means if your goal is to hit 3 bar, it can hit that immediately if you're at 100%, or at 10% power, it's just not going to go as hard to get there. It's not taking into account flow rate or anything like that. It is taking into account the power, the work with which that motor is exerting in order to reach that goal. So you have these different variables to control a wide variety of different shots. Now, what a lot of people do and what I tend to prefer is really focusing on flow rate because this gives us the most forgiveness. Working on pressure is old school, that's cool, but even if you want a really goopy, thick, chocolatey, viscous shot, it's best to go off of flow rate because one of the things that kills your delicious thick texture is a quickening flow rate near the end of a shot because you went maybe a little too coarse and the pressure is trying to maintain, and so it's got to catch up on flow rate. So doing flow first is an incredible way of doing that. So I'm a big fan of most profiles being largely centered around our flow. So let's go with the flow and understand flow is so important. Whether you're wanting light, thin, tea-like soup-style shots, whether you want low contact style shots, whether you want turbo shots, whether you want traditional shots, whether you want lever shots. Flow is such an important thing to understand. Now, again, I want to absolutely make certain we understand that a built-in difference of this machine than other machines is the watery delivery. If you're used to using a piston-driven machine like a manual or a spring lever or something along those lines, then you'll have a little bit more understanding of that water delivery. But every other machine is going to act different whenever it is pump driven to a group head. And again, it's because you have a shower of water over the puck as opposed to a water column over the puck. One of the big advantages of the Meticulous is that water column, and why I love it so much is because we're moving a water column through that puck, which will improve our consistency of the extraction. Whenever you start off with water right above the puck and you're pushing a column of water through, it's a way more even route for the water than if we were to just sprinkle, potentially create divots in the top of the bed, whatever it might be, and have different areas of flow that's increasing and decreasing. We try to fix it with puck screens, with different types of tamping and ridges on the puck, but when we can do just a column of water, it improves a lot of that efficiency. So that was a lot. We talked about a lot of variables. We talked about a lot of how we can integrate these things into our, system, but mostly it's understanding what each of them do and understanding that we have control over them. Now, learning how to actually apply them is what we'll talk about next. So for those of you who drink light roast, we have a video dedicated to light. For those of you who drink more medium, we have one dedicated to medium. For those of you who drink dark, we got a video on dark roast. So go find the video that's, works with you, and we will go through on how to dial in your coffee with those specific styles of roasts.